had an interesting question, and it's a really good question too. It was, what bowwoods were used in Northern Plains? I think it was Northern Plains. Hopefully, it wasn't the Great Plains because that is a huge geographical area that would make this kind of an unwieldy kind of answer. But let's consider the Great Plains. You've got North Dakota, South Dakota on the east, and then it kind of makes a block with Nebraska on the southwestern portion, and then you go up to Wyoming and Montana. 5 states, 5 big states that are, it's going to help a little bit. Maybe it'll confuse you, but you have to consider the surrounding states. And so on the eastern side, bordering North Dakota, South Dakota, you've got Minnesota, and then below that, Iowa. Then we're going to ring around. Going west, you've got Kansas, Colorado, and then you'd have Utah and Idaho at the north. Now, before I get into just the 5 states of the Northern Plains, we need to consider the adjoining states in those environments too. The boundary layer, as it was. On the eastern side, where you've got Minnesota and Iowa, yeah, by Northern Plains standards, those are relatively lush. You're going to have a lot more hardwood trees added to the list. On the western side, though, when you get Idaho, which, I like Coeur d'Alene, it's a very lush spot, but it's conifers, and then Utah, which is not considered like a Louisiana-style green lush area. And then Colorado's, let's face it, beautiful scenery, but it's pretty darn dry. And then Kansas is Kansas, let's say. So the trees, the native trees, in not considering really vast stretches of movement in major trade routes, North and South Dakota, they have some oaks, which is good bowwood, and sugar maple on the eastern side. You see, you can't just say, what did Northern Plains people use for bowwood? Because it's a big area. On the western side, when you get Idaho and Utah, it's not known for its hardwood forests. I'm setting this up. And then you've got the Northern Plains within. In the southern portion, Colorado, aspens, you're not going to use that as far as the hardwoods. Cottonwoods, forget that. And then Kansas, I don't think it's legal to own a tree in Kansas. Sorry if you're from Kansas, I'm dumping on you. And so I've kind of set that up. That you consider the Great Plains and the surrounding areas, because, moving 150, 200 miles, through the prairies of Minnesota to get to the lush forest of Minnesota. And it's, a lot of conifers up north and stuff. But it's easy to get too far afield here and confusing. Let's just cover some of the trees that I think would be good bowwoods. Yes, you can find Osage bows that were made way up north, trade routes. Let's just consider the native trees. An easy way to do it would be North Dakota. Native trees, you look it up, but I'll help you out. There are oaks and maples, and you're not too far from, when you're in North and South Dakota, you're not too far from the range of hop hornbeam. I mean, hop hornbeam kind of peters out in Minnesota, but you could have taken a trip to visit the mother-in-law, to Minnesota, hop on the horse and cruise on over. So hop hornbeam might be a possibility, along with, just say bur oak and sugar maple, which are good. You would also have, though, chokecherry, which is a good bowwood. Yeah. Serviceberry, which is a good bowwood. Juniper, and if you were hard pressed, it's not a bad bowwood. Paper birch. Now, we're not just going to say, what did they use in the Great Plains? Let's buzz on over to Nebraska, Wyoming, and Montana. You've lost the maples. You've lost the oaks. You've lost the hornbeam, the hop hornbeam. But you still have your choice of choke cherry, which I'm sure was very treasured bowood. It's good stuff. Service berry, the juniper is a good bowood, especially sinew back. And, if you were hard pressed, paper birch. Now we can get into trade routes. Let's just add some trade routes. If you're in North and South Dakota, the eastern portion, let's forget you if you're in Wyoming and Montana and Nebraska. Let's just say North and South Dakota, which border Minnesota and maybe a little bit of Iowa. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. Once you hit Minnesota, and you're going to travel across Minnesota on horse or whatever, across the prairies, you're in the southern portion. I imagine, I'm kind of guessing at this, a lot of hardwoods, but barring moving to that outer ring of Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Kansas, Iowa, and Minnesota, just concentrated in there. You're not going to move from your spot. North and South Dakota, again, to cap it off, oak, maples, hard maple, serviceberry, choke cherry. They probably have juniper and paper birch. On the western side, you're pretty much darn limited to the big four: serviceberry, choke cherry, paper birch, and juniper, which are good bowwoods. Maybe somebody crossed the mountains if you're on the western portion of the northern plains and traded ye for some Pacific yew. Pacific yew has been found in those little gall wings. I'm going to give you an example. I am from southern Michigan originally, Jackson County. And US 12 goes through the southern part of Jackson County. US 12 is the Bob East Trail. Also passes by MIS, Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn. They have found, the theys that know everything, but they have found Bob East Trail, southern Michigan, obsidian arrowheads that obviously came from the west. Obsidian arrowheads were quickly traded in use for steel trade points. And so the obsidian arrowheads, old. And so there were major trade routes. And you see it, the Blackfoot, prized Osage orange, that came from the Missouri Valley, way down south. One reason why I didn't answer the Great Plains or the Northern Plains, because the Great Plains extend way to heck south you're starting to get into, where people primarily used Osage orange. It wasn't a long hop, skip, and a jump to get that stuff. But anyway, I hope I answered your question. Again, the wood database, boom, that's not really a tangent. Type in, pick a tree. Let's just pick sugar maple. You type in on your Googleizer, sugar maple wood database. Oh, you're going to get to this website that will give you the engineering capabilities of trees. It'll give you the elastic modulus. It'll give you the crushing strength. It'll give you all sorts of stuff. The density, the modulus of elasticity, all this stuff. And you can compare that with other woods. Compare the modulus of elasticity, the crushing strength, this, that, and the other thing between sugar maple and American elm. Go do the same thing. American elm wood database, rock elm wood database, red elm wood database. And you can compare different woods and kind of judge by the numbers. The Jonca hardness, that's another factor. How different woods within the same genus would compare as bowwoods. Okay, now this is why that wasn't a tangent. Now you're going to go to native trees to South Dakota. Native trees North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska. You're going to find hardwoods, and it's not going to be an extensive list like if you were down in Appalachia. So it's not going to be a lot of homework. And then you can go, choke cherry might not be in the wood database because typically, those woods are commercial use. But it might be. And compare that to another wood, Do your homework. You have to actually pick out, when you're doing the Great Plains, huge area, Northern Plains, Southern Plains, the different states within those, and also consider the states that go around them when you're doing your native trees to this state. And using your knowledge of the wood database and being able to factor all the data and manage all the variables, you can kind of guess at what woods were available for each tribe, knowing where did they live in this particular time, because the Lakota originally came from the Lakes region and then moved west. And so you have to pick a particular time, pick a particular area within a greater area. If you want to localize what tribe probably uses this kind of wood, and then go to native trees in that spot. And that's about it. This is kind of a hard video to do because I got to know stuff. Geography, tree stuff. But I think I kind of gave you a start. Appreciate the question there, John. It's a good, solid question. Thumbs up.